That's just the bits of cutting tooling that were in a couple of tin boxes with the lathe. Sorted out the junk, sorted out the wood chips, and there's a couple of kilos of high-speed steel, probably 3 kilos of carbide brazed, 3 Morse taper chuck, tailstock chuck, revolving centre, that's bearings and knacker, set of 3 soft jaws for a decent sized chuck. There are some chucks which I've got to go through. They've suffered from pretty bad storage, but we spent most of the day clearing up the stuff around there. I thought I'd sort these and get them moved. Well, after a considerable amount of heaving and pushing and shoving and thrutching and thrashing, I've shifted the planer thicknesser and the saw out, and I've just brought in the drive pedestal just to give me an idea of the size it's going to be. It's a lot easier to visualise rather than stretching a thin tape measure. What I want to do is just set it on the ground so that I can actually work all the way around it, because what I found with the scraping of the shaper was access to the different sides is quite key. And even though that was quite a big heavy casting, it's nowhere near the size of the bed, so I'm not going to be able to move the casting. It means I've got to move around it. So I've just plonked that there for now. I've done a rough clean up on it. Ultimately, once I get the, in several weeks time, it'll shift sitting parallel to the wall along, and all this lot will be built onto it. It should give me a bit of room each end, and then what I might end up doing, if I can do everything I want to do on that, I can then sell the Boxford, and then that pedestal will fit that end, and it will fit quite nicely in there with a light window above it. Whilst I'd got the pedestal off, I've already took the motor out, and it's a lot easier fitting the motor in before the bed's on top. So the boot was on here, and couldn't help myself. I thought I'd have a look, see what was involved with the bearings. It's wired 415, 3-phase, or 440, I forget, same difference. And I was intrigued to see what sort of bearings were in it. So they're there, PHM 10. Anyway, what I am surprised about, if I turn the pulley on the other end, that outside race is turning, and I'm surprised at that. I would have thought that would have been a sort of fairly snug fit. There is a, I don't know what you call them, there's a name for them, wavy washer, which provides some thrust, which I assume would fit onto that outer ring and push it in. Anyway, given that I've got to chase the tails out to get it onto 240 volt so I can wire it in delta rather than star, I've got to take the rotor out, and in the process of taking that out, I'll push the bearings out and rinse them all off and re-grease them, because the grease was pretty hard. Anyway, a lot of shit coming out. So pulled the end bell housing off, quite a bit of crap in there. We're going to take the other end off and then pull the rotor out. So we've got the stator out, and that looks like crispy insulation. It's very dirty. So we'll give it a fine tickle up with a brush and see what sort of state it's in. The state is, well, I don't know, Can't see anything particularly wrong with it. No bad scuffing or anything. The drive pulley on the front's seized on, so that's going to need some tickling off, as it's destroyed my cheap bearing puller. Well, I've degreased the chip tray and brought it down. That was a bit of a wrestling match, and I've brought down the tail end pedestal. What I need to do is, apart from lift that up, I need to clean the surfaces off that it mounts on, because it had picked up all sorts of crap in the van and through moving it about. I had a break from doing the motor, but I now need to, big podger, take those 3 wires there, truncate them and then solder on new ends and bring them out through the top. And while I'm at it, I'm going to replace the existing wires. I've hiked the tray up. It's been a bit of a tussle trying to get the crane in. Thought I'd run the tap down the holes before I try and stick the bolts down, and they are 1/2 inch Whitworth fine. And I went to my tap set for Whitworth fine and pulled out the 1/2 inch, and it is no way at all going down there. I've checked the thread and it's definitely Whitworth fine. So I've checked a few of the others in the tap set and tap and die set, which are supposed to be split dies, and they're not, they're all solid. And it seems that every one of them is probably a couple of thou oversize. So I gotta get myself some bleeding Whitworth fine. Frustrating. Story of my life. So measuring over the tap size, that's 1/2 inch and 6 thou. And the bolts 3 thou under 1/2 inch. So that to me seems like a huge amount of bloody clearance. Yeah, not impressed. And it was the same when I had the standard Whitworth. It's my own fault, and I did only buy them for cleaning out stuff. I didn't buy them for cutting, because they're shit for that. And I've just been out and picked up some straight edges from my friend Chris's workbench that he seldom visits. They're in various conditions, none of which are ready to use, so we got to get them back, and then that's the first order of players, get them checked out. There's some nice ones in there. There's a old brown and sharp one, nice lightweight one. There's a small steel one somewhere, and they're all 6-footers. Well, we've got the straight edges unloaded and into the workshop. Got the bed on the lathe yesterday, or the lathe bed. The bolts are located, but they all need nipping up now. Then we're going to sort out these. But next job, once we've got the bed nipped up, is clean off all the crap, all the old paint, all the chips. It's a bit of a mess. When I first found the lathe, all of these cavities were full of chips. It hasn't been very well looked after in its recent life. Some nice old straight edges. So that one and this one are 6 foot. That's a 4, and then that's a lightweight 6 foot. I think that's steel. And then there's a steel parallel straight edge in the box. But they all need a good looking at, so that'll be later down the line. Well, just cleaning up these straight edges, cleaning the crap off them, get the loose paint off, and then I'm going to give them a coat of paint so they're ready for scraping back in. I'm trying to see a maker's mark on it, but nothing on this side. 6 foot long. I can just pick it up. No, no maker's mark on it. It's bloody heavy section. Right, I'll bring you back once I've got it cleaned down. It looks a bit more presentable. It's all for the main reason for stripping and painting it is to get it clean, really, so it's not dropping crap when you're using it to print. And it looks a lot better and it's easier to handle. But most of the paint fell off, and then we've been over it with a wire brush on a drill and give it a coat of machining enamel. Bit tedious, especially as I don't like painting, and it's certainly not a Picasso job. Well, unless he had a blind dribbly smeary period. One more to do, and then next job's get them out of the way and let the paint harden off whilst I finish off the motor. So I'm just starting to clean down the 4-foot straight edge. The other two are painted black, and that's had its second coat. Anyway, in the process of cleaning this, I came across the date marker. So it's a number 30, 4th of October 44, 1944 that is. Last checked in 1970. I believe these came from an auction. My friend bought them all as a job lot in the early 70s, paid what was then £1 a foot for the length of each of the this one, that one, and I think the small one. Yeah, £1 a foot, whatever that was in old money. God, I hate painting. So that's undercoated and primed. Got to find a different colour now, because black and grey ain't going to wash. So well, it's the tedious task of degreasing and cleaning up the bed. Can't find any evidence of it being hand scraped. So that's the seating position for the headstock. And there's no evidence to me. It's had a bit of blunt trauma around the chuck area, as you'd expect. And that's the, let's see if we can get that in the shot. There's a it says construction number, just about make it out there. Normally it has a set of initials behind it, but I can't find them either. One thing we noticed when we took the headstock off was there didn't appear to be any means of adjusting the headstock for the throw. Having cleaned all up, I'm thinking that might be it at the back, because I can't see anything else. I need to clean a bit more around here, see if there's anything else, but that goes right the way through, and there's a little tiny point there. So I'll have to have a look on the casting of the headstock, but that would enable it to just be shifted a fraction. Yeah, getting cheesed off with cleaning down old stuff at the minute. Well, I'm going to do a bit more on the motor. I've soldered on the new tails from the star point, and the original ones have been replaced with new. I've brought them back, they're all marked up. So the final job is to basically secure all this lot, so that if there's any vibration it can't chaff. And the way you do it, well, the way it was done originally was a cloth binding tape, but because of the amount of insulating lacquer and bitumen and whatever was added, the only way I can do it is by threading through a thread through these holes, bringing it round the outside and knotting it. I'll just hold them all back. So I've got some heavy duty thread, a couple of actual the leather working needles, so they're blunt rather than sharp, and I'm going to work my way around. bind them all in and see how it looks. It was a bit fiddly, and I'm probably going to nudge the camera while I do this, but what I'm doing is poke the needle through, and it's path of least resistance, i.e. no resistance, and then snag the end of it with the pliers. And knot them over at the top. It'd help if I had a few less thumbs and a few more fingers. God, I should imagine there's some electricians out there that are howling with laughter or white with fear at this. The hardest thing is trying to find a hole to get through. Well, it's not the neatest of jobs, but it's all bound up now. As I say, I've got some potting compound I'll brush on. Final job is just to give this a bit of a clean inside. There's quite a bit of shit over the metally bits. I've got to do that carefully. And then the same on that. I'm currently soaking the pulley with penetrating oil because I can't get that off now. And I want to get the pulley off and then press the bearings off, wash the bearings out. They run all right, but they want some new greasing. That looks a bit better. Only found one score where there's about there to there with some crap's gone through and got dragged round. There's no burr on it now. So yeah, and cleaned up the rotor. Just waiting, as I say, for I've got to sort something out with another bearing puller, and then keep soaking the pulley with penetrating oil. Clean up the crap on there. Can't feel any burrs or anything else. So back to the joyous pastime of remove the seized part. The slotted grub screw, which was in there, wouldn't shift. I've had some heat on it, still wouldn't shift. It's been soaking for 4 days, still wouldn't shift, so I've drilled it out. I've set the bearing puller up then. Firstly, under there, pulling out. and it stripped the thread. Piece of shit. And then for good measure I thought I'd duplicate the same on the smaller one. They are crap. I mean, the diameter of that, well, that thread's supposed to be M16. Even on the bits that I haven't actually used, they're just crap. I mean, the only decent bits are the legs, so at some stage I'll remake the bloody things. So if you're shopping, don't buy them. They're crap. Rant over. This is rapidly turning into a home for waifs and strafes on the straight edge front. Picked up another 4, which I've agreed to strip and paint in exchange for making use of them. So we've got a 7-foot steel ground face. I think that's a 2-foot or 18 inch. Yeah, 18 inch. Quite a nice one. 6-foot, 5-foot, and a 3-foot. And that's a Windley. It's the same pattern as the one I've got in 2-foot. And then we've got an intensifying plate, he's called it. They're all been stored in a container and suffered from damp condensation, so they all need refacing. So I've just cleaned off the base of what we were hoping would be our master level. Come on, focus. It was wrapped in oiled paper, but this suffered from moisture ingress. Worst bit we're coming up to, which is in the middle, which is here and there. That's some pretty nasty pitting in that. So methinks that's going to want to re-scrape, which then means printing it off something. This is the underside of the, or the working face of the Windley. I think it's a 30 inch, and it is going to be, this is the worst of them all. Bloody annoying because the rest of it's actually pretty good nick. So instead of trying to clean that off with a paint scraper, I'm going to try some rust eater. See what that looks like. Bit annoying there. So that's scrubbed them all down, took the rust off, painted them up. We got a 6-foot, 18 inch, and then this one is apparently it's not a griddle. It's an intensifying plate, is how my mate refers to it. So it's for used on larger machines where you want the points per inch above 25. You might want to lift them to 35 or even 40. So when you're working on a large surface, you'd get it all within, all to 25 on a straight edge, and then you'd bring in one of these and you'd work it, gridding it through, lifting the points per inch. None of them are in particularly good nick at the minute, so I think next week we got some long evenings scraping the first one back into spec. Meanwhile, the motor is, the state is still seized. I've got a hydraulic bearing puller on under pressure and some penetrating oil. I'm hoping it'll have done its magic by the morning, but I'm not holding out much hope. We got the motor pulley off. You can see the very, very light corrosion here. That's where the grub screw was spotted out. You know, what a pain in the backside that's been. Anyway, combination of the bearing puller and the penetrating oil. This bearing puller, which my mates lent me, was rusted up to buggery when we got it. The adjustable collar which fits around the large threaded shaft up in here is rusted into position, so that's the next thing we've got to shift. I don't want to give it, I want to give it in back with it all functional, so leave that on to soak tonight. Anyway, the kids are preparing a surprise birthday meal for me, so I've got to go in and be all surprised. Catch you later. Well, we've just coated it all with a 2-part epoxy potting compound. Yeah, bloody nightmare to use. Very dribbly. It's got 250 grams of it. So we'll clean it all up after that. Alright. Once it's gone off, which is supposed to be an hour, working time's 20 minutes. It's supposed to be handleable within an hour. We'll fit the rest of the motor back together. Well, that's the biggest straight edge and the largest face. It's 4 inches across, 6 foot long, and as all the others, it had a degree of surface rust, which I'm just treating. You can actually see the scraping marks on it, so it's I'm hoping it's going to be a damn sight closer than having to start from scratch. But there's pretty bad around that area. I'm hoping that'll clean up. The plan is basically to get that face something like, and then use those 3 and basically do the width with 3 plate between them. But I want something just to start off with so I can compare all 3. Don't know. Anyway, we'll see how it goes. Got another 15 minutes to leave that rust eater on it, and then clean it all off and have a view. Well, that's the motor reassembled. I've drilled and tapped it for a 1/2 inch width. Socket head, Allen grub screw. Probably needs another squirt of grease in the bearings. I didn't want to put too much in. It runs alright. I can't feel anything on it. Chris is coming around later to measure out the wires, make sure I haven't cocked up on any of the idents, and then we'll stick a plug on it and fire it up with the inverter, and then that's that bit near enough done. Then need to sort out some kind of enclosure on the top. It's only got a flat plate. That's what it was, and then on the end of that, where the 3 tails came out, they went into that. So yeah, bit of progress. So that's had the rust eater on it. I've cleaned it all off, and then I've just gone over and stoned it. Yeah, see the rust on the left, all the corrosion areas. It's just that top end that's not cleaned out. What I want to do is basically I need something to verify the straight, if you like, not distorted over the 6 foot length. I can use my Wimbley 2 foot to go for contact. I've got a reasonable edge. I think the narrowest point is inch and a bit there. So if I print down this near side, I should be able to get a reasonable contact, and then I can reverse the edge that I'm printing, print it again, and make sure I've not got any common blank areas on it, and then I can start printing one to the other. I need somewhere to start, and that's about the best the faces have got. That's the next 6 footer cleaned up. Same procedure as I went through with the other one. Not sure what went on around here, but yeah, it's a much tighter patterning of a scraping, if I can get it to show up. Got a higher percentage coverage, whereas if you look at that, I'll try and get my template sorted out, but for scale, my finger, I would doubt it's 50% coverage. And looking at the size of those contacts, let's see if I just get a drop of ruler on. Come on, focus. It's not liking that shiny face. There we go. I mean, you take a square inch, say down to there, you got 1, 2, 3, 4 points of contact in that square inch. So I don't think it's not a surface that's going to be giving me great bearing surface, but I'm looking at being able to check from one end to the other that the straight edge is in contact. Anyway, enough of me waffling on. Lunchtime. I'm just working up the, or cleaning off the rust of the surface of the Browner Sharp 6-footer, which basically gives me then 3 6-footers, one at 5.5, and a selection of smaller ones. None of them are great surfaces. I've asked the question on Practical Machinist, what's the best method or most efficient method to generate basically a flat plane over them. There's a lot of talk about the Whitworth 3-plate method, which obviously was designed for converting 3 surface plates to give a flat true plane on each. Surface plates have the advantage of the generally sort of nearer square than they are rectangular, whereas straight edges aren't. They're long and thin. So the routine with the Whitworth 3-plate method is you rub 2 together and you print them, rotating them round, so they end up basically with 1 convex and 2 concave. Then you rub the 2 concave ones together aggressively to bring them into basically equal each other. Then you take one of those and you move the convex one to it, and then you go through the process again of equalising them. Now obviously with straight edges you can't do the rotation to generate that sort of, I think caudal sphere it calls it. Imagine a truncated sphere. So the best you can achieve with these, I would think, would be basically a bow in one and then a concave section in another one, and then the third one would be another concave one, and then you just bring them progressively closer. Anyway, I've asked the question. There's a lot of guys out there with far more experience than I have, and I can't believe I'm the first person that's tried to resurface 3 straight edges. So we'll see what comes back. Meanwhile, I'll carry on chipping rust off. So we decided to graph out the straight edges with a machinist level. This is accurate to 1/2 thou in 10 inches. So the first job is to just verify it's still in, verify that the bubble's still parallel with the base. So I've got my surface plate sat on my drill press table, and I've basically adjusted the surface plate around so that I can get a horizontal level plane somewhere on the spirit level. So I've then set a backstop up, and then I take a reading. I'm not going to touch the backstop because you can see the bubble move when I do, but we're 2 divisions over perfectly level on this side, if we turn it 180 degrees round and put it back on up to the backstop without moving the backstop, let it level, I don't know how much you can see, maybe my cameraman can zoom in a little bit with the camera, but we're two divisions past level. So I'm now confident that that spirit level is reading parallel with the base. I've just spent the last hour messing about with a box spirits level square and not managed to achieve that. So now what I'm going to use is that plane and see if I can actually get the thing to calibrate as well. Then it gives me two spirit levels I can use. Right, well, having calibrated the level, we'll start taking some readings. The way that Chris has explained it to me is all we're looking for is the change over it. So starting from one end, if we call that 0.0, we then go up 2.5 tenths, and then at this point we are 3.75 tenths. Then we're up to half a thou higher here than at the other end. Then we're 6.25 tenths up, and then we drop back to half a thou. So the way I read that is we basically got a very, very slight dip on it for all intents and purposes, or if you like, a slightly higher lump here. That's before I've hung it and rung it, so I'm going to do that, start playing tubular bells on it and give it 40 minutes or so doing that. So we'll just check what Chris believes to be the most recently scraped one, and it's got 2.5 tenths high towards the middle, and it drops back, and then we're down 1/10 at that end. So that don't seem too far out, and I'm gonna give this a good clean again over here. I can't feel anything, but that was the worst of the pitted area. There are times when I actually feel somebody's winding me up. Anyway, presenting tubular bells with cast iron straight edges. Do a bit more of that for an hour, and by which time the neighbours should be well chuffed. Two things I'm impressed with: one, the paint hasn't fallen off, and two, the roof hasn't come in. Bring you back when we're done, and then back up to measure. Oi, you with the yak in the yellow robe. Go on, bugger off. It's not for you. Go on. Get back up your mountain. Oi, go on, get off with you. Coming here praying. No, it's not a ninja ceremony. Well, after calling the various Buddhist monks off the hills, we're back down on the measuring position. It was drilled and tapped for 1/4 so I've put a couple of grub screws in so that I can level it up easier. Other than that, it's still sat flat on that end, but this end is now sat on the 2 points of the grub screws on a piece of thin steel. And for all intents and purposes, the readings are within 1/4 thou of where they were. Not enough for me to say that walloping it's made any difference, because there's the reading error. I would have said was 1/4 thou over that, but it's within, yeah, what are we talking, not quarter, yeah, 1/4 thou, 2/10. Anyway, fun exercise. We're going to do the brown and sharp one now. Chris brought around a selection of his scrapers and was gutted to find out that the damp had got into his storage case. So I said I'd spend an hour and clean them up, clean the rust off, see what I could polish up. This is the straight ones, and there's that's a Wimit, I think Wimit or Winit, German made carbide tipped, and then the others are well, these are 2 Sandviks. That's he calls a bullnose one for roughing out cylinder bearings. That's another Wimit, a slim bit of carbide on the end. I mean, that's not a flexible scraper. That's getting on for 3/8, between 1/4 and 3/8 thick. That's one of his own creations, made from an old file, but again, fundamentally these are not made to be flexible. This one is actually on a Morse Taper 1 socket. When I clean it up, I'll see if I can find a name on it, but he modified the end to take a piece of carbide that had got access to some carbide blades that size. And then there is curved ones for doing the inside of bearings. Again, all purpose made for particular jobs. Well, that one's a beast, 6 inches long. Anyway, we'll do a bit of cleaning up and then get on with the next bit of scraping. Well, I thought I'd better get me practice back in, so I'm just scraping in the 20-inch straight edge. He's had about an hour's work, bearing in mind by the time I took the rust off there was no evidence of this previous scrape. It's slowly picking up now. A bit light in that top corner there and that top corner there, which if I hadn't got a good print everywhere else I would suggest it was high at that end on this end, but I've got a pretty even print all the way along. So we'll just carry on plucking out the blues. I'm printing it off the 2-foot Windley straight edge.
Are you prepared to accept that my cut, right, is like that?
Yep.
Right? And a straight scrape would be like that.
Yep.
Now if you look at them for me, right, I hope we're not going to fire this at Mr. Mr. King. Now,
stop it now.
What that is that from me.
Yep.
Whereas what you have with a straight scrape, I mean, if you lean on the scrape, is that.
Yeah.
Not quite that. It's more like it's more down and then straight.
Yeah.
Are you with me?
Yeah. As the tool digs in.
Now, what you get is you'll always get a ridge with that and chatter, whereas your curl,
you don't.
You've got that, but also what it does is it enables you to position your scraper where you want and just take that spot.
Okay.
Are you with me?
Yep, I'm with you. Yeah.
Because the middle, that's where your spot would have been. Are you with me?
Mm-hmm.
Or your group of spots, depending. Are you with me? That is why it's done. Because first of all, they started off working towards them. I told you all that, haven't they?
Yeah.
And what they found was, with bedding with a curl, it gives you another it gives you a more gentle. You don't get that
sudden dig
in the ridge.
Yeah.
And because when you stop, you don't come back out, do you?
No, you've
So
not.
that is, it's, people think it's some sort of silly mystery. No, it's bollocks. All you're doing is that was, and you. I mean, you. If we were on shears as wide as that table, right? Those curls would be that big, right?
Yeah.
And we'd just bash away. We'd just carry on, and then as we intensified the bed, the curling would get smaller.
I'm with you. Yeah.
And that's and that is intentional. Right. I can't believe, to be honest, that this woman you were telling me about wanted to sell to take the
You know, the box is separate to the edges. What can you say?